introduce you guys to a new game in development from the good folks over at V. I'm going to give you guys a little run through of some of the ideas and features we'll have cooked up for you guys once this little project is finished, and we hope you'll be excited for what we have in store for you. The game is called Pressure, and it's a first-person underwater, disaster, survival, horror simulation, slated for fictitious release, that seeks to deliver a cinematic experience that is never played the same way twice, kinda like Left 4 Dead, which was released by Valve not too long ago. Now, Pressure takes place in kind of a mysterious deep-sea facility called Belisarius, over 2 miles beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. It's kind of a zoological research lab, or something, doing some kind of top-secret research stuff. The lab's purpose and existence isn't clearly laid out for you as the player, until you've taken time to gather scraps of data that put the story together, but we'll cover that later. The game starts with you as one of many playable characters going about business as usual in Belisarius, until shit goes haywire. After disaster hits the lab, it's up to you as the player to use every resource at your fingertips to stabilize the labs, ward off threats, or, when the shit really hits the fan, to escape, with or without any other survivors. The goals and objectives of the game are really up to you within the limits set by whatever disaster strikes, but victory is, of course, a function of whether or not you avoid becoming a casualty statistic. As the game plays out, several fully destructible areas, all randomly generated and laid out at the start of each game, will take realistic levels of damage and increase possible dangers accordingly. And how and where the damage is done depends entirely on the circumstances of the unfortunate events that plague Belisarius. So as you go, you may have to deal with tiny problems such as fixing small leaks, and larger problems such as hauling ass out of a rapidly flooding dome, all the way up to outright deadly problems such as explosive decompression. The disaster itself is also dynamic and completely random. In one example, the player, a diving and undersea demolitions expert, has just enough time to wake up from his bunk and step out the door to see a huge whale-sized creature crash headlong through a 3-story glass window and flood the main area, resulting in a desperate dash for survival by not only the player, but the nearby staff, one of whom even shoved the player off a ladder in a desperate attempt to scramble up past him. Yet developers also explain that sometimes the player might go out in their daily routines for upwards of 15 minutes before any real danger arises. So far, there are over 100 different tasks, some unique to a particular profession, that you as a player can carry out just wandering around the station's over 40 possible objective locations. All of this helps create an atmosphere of suspense, tension, unease, and dread as you wander around Belisarius aware of the facility's impending doom. It also serves to put the player in a variety of situations as things go awry. The same disaster of sudden decompression plays out very differently when you're a scientist working on lab specimens than when you're a mechanical engineer tightening bolts in the guts of the facility, or a diver welding with his tiny torch and his back to the cloudy, dark, open seas. Even the nature of the disaster is different each playthrough. Sometimes a gigantic sea monster will attack the facility directly. Other times, it'll be a lurking danger that snatches facility staff one by one undetected. Or maybe the strange new lab specimens have broken free and are infecting personnel. On some occasions, the danger won't even involve sea monsters at all. A systems failure or explosion could cause plenty of damage to the facility without any need for dangerous creatures. Then again, disasters can strike multiple times. Or you may be subject to multiple types of disasters. So just because you started to seal a potentially catastrophic leak doesn't mean you won't have a tentacled horror the size of the Eiffel Tower bearing down on you a few minutes later. Thanks to a smart AI director, similar to the one in Left 4 Dead, the disaster is randomized, but also focused around the player to a degree. Attacks and dynamic damage can obviously happen on the other side of the station, but often they'll be orchestrated around where the player is and what they're doing to maximize the danger and excitement. The player is more likely than anyone to have his room attacked, or to see a gigantic whale monster pass by the window prior to the disaster itself. There are over 120 possible catastrophe events that are dynamically combined or linked, and this doesn't even count the dynamic destruction of individual lab facilities as a result, which can lead to problems with flooding, gas leaks, oxygen depletion, explosive decompression, fires, lockdowns, electrical hazards, and any other number of life-threatening conditions and situations. You never know where you're going to be when disaster strikes, or what that disaster is going to be. The world of Pressure is inhabited by a number of underwater monsters, varying in size from something the size of a large dog to unfathomably gargantuan behemoths. Monsters such as whale-sized sharks, Lovecraftian horrors, and bioluminescent serpents fully capable of devouring a man in a single gulp. The game's array of monsters is designed to be far more unsettling than most typical horror games, and if we do our jobs right, anyone with a fear of water and what lies beneath may have trouble playing through in one sitting. One of the game's two core design philosophies is change. The game is meant to be played multiple times, unlike most games which give you the most content in a single playthrough. Some playthroughs will be very short, some will take hours, and because the game is never exactly the same way on any two playthroughs, coming back for more is much more appealing. One of the most impactful differences is the way in which the game begins. You have a choice between 12 different professions within the facility, such as security officer, medic, electrical engineer, or biological technician, among others. Different characters have different abilities. Some are more athletically inclined and are better at running, carrying, climbing, and tire less easily. Others may be better swimmers. Some may not be able to swim at all. And yet others may have explosives training or skills with other tools. The station's cook might be able to prime and set plastic explosives, but there's also a huge chance for failure, so always examine your options first. Your choice of class dictates not only your starting abilities and attributes, such as physical strength and stamina, and proficiency with tools and weapons, but also what tools and security clearance you begin with. A technician might be best equipped to repair the facility and restore access to battered areas, but his skills with weapons may be non-existent. On the other hand, a security officer might have better access to the facility's coveted firearms and be more physically capable, but he may not have much choice when it comes to dealing with damage to the facility, and attempting critical repairs might be outright hazardous. Like in one example, a rookie squad member blew himself up using a highly pressurized underwater welding kit. Character generation doesn't end there, though. Once a class is set, your place within the profession is generated at random. Pick security officer, and you may find yourself just arriving as a new recruit on your first day at the facility, or you may find yourself at the reins of the guy who's been running the place for years.